You people asked for it, so I'm delivering. Godzilla Vengeanceverse scaling time. I'll be starting out with the weaker characters and going up to the ones that are essentially literal gods. Starting off with arguably the weakest kaiju in the series, we have Gojira. Not Godzilla himself, rather Godzilla's father in this series. Heavily based on the Godzilla from Godzilla 1954, the original Godzilla film, this Godzilla has pretty much all that Godzilla's feats, plus new stuff. In his lore, it is pretty much canon that he is not only more powerful than any nuclear weapon that was seen at that point, but Dr. Surazawa compares him to his exact estimate, although not yet shown in the series, it will be shown eventually, is that he is equal to approximately 40,000 megatons, which is quite a bit more than any nuclear weapon that's ever been made, ever. Granted, this isn't just a normal atomic breath power. That would be him literally self-destructing and unleashing everything he has in him. Think about it as kind of like burning Godzilla's meltdown being his maximum power. This is his equivalent to that. His normal, most powerful attack he can do without nearly fatally injuring himself would be around half that. That said, that's still easily mountain-flattening levels of power, and is not something you'd want to get hit with. Some of his feats include wiping out half of 1954's Tokyo in a single blast, and causing almost all of Tokyo Bay to evaporate with a nuclear pulse, which is pretty impressive for a kaiju that's only around mountain level. Just above him would be Angus. Although Angus doesn't appear that strong so far, he is stronger than his father. His father actually would have fought Gojira in the past and would have been comparable to him in power. Angus is around 4 times as strong as his father, so you can pretty much get a pretty clear idea of how powerful he'd be then. Unlike the Angus we see in the actual Godzilla series, this Angus is much more built for melee combat, and he's clearly built a little differently, having much larger claws in the front, and being more designed for digging underground and then surprising enemies. He also has a very powerful fire breath that can damage entities as powerful as False Godzilla, who is essentially like a weaker version of Space Godzilla, with Ghidorah DNA. Right above Angus, we have Varan. Varan just blatantly upscales him for one main reason. He has a stronger breath attack. His breath attack is pure radiation, which has been seen completely, well, it hasn't been seen yet, but it will be seen completely erasing people just entirely, as it is basically just a gamma ray beam. So Varan upscales him just due to that. Above them, we have a group of kaijus that scale kind of weird because their durability is horrible, but their actual attack potency is incredibly high. These are the mass-produced Mecha Godzillas, heavily based on the Showa Mecha Godzilla. They are comparable in power to the Showa Mecha Godzilla we see in Godzilla vs. Mecha Godzilla, not the 5 times stronger version we see in Terra Mecha Godzilla. Meaning they would upscale Showa King Ghidorah, who could basically blow up stars, and are at their highest ends around solar system level. This is ignoring 4D scaling and other stuff from the Showa era, which I just am not counting for these guys, as their durability would basically make that not make sense. However, their durability is horrible, as even Angus's fire breath can melt right through them. For reference, Angus's fire breath only really burns around, maybe at an absolute highest, 100,000 degrees Celsius. Which, although that is incredibly hot, it's nothing comparable to Godzilla's atomic breath in this series, which can hit literal infinite levels of heat once he reaches a high enough level. So, yeah, it's not that impressive, the durability they have. Now, for the next kaiju, I'm retconning something I said in the first Vengeanceverse scaling video. Vengeanceverse Manda is not going to be equal to Showa Godzilla. When I made that video, I kind of just forgot that Showa Godzilla was as powerful as he was. So where Manda would actually end up is around moon level. The reasons for this is he massively upscales the Gojira that is the father of Godzilla. The reasons he massively upscales him is because even when Gojira was around, Gojira was not the Alpha Kaiju. The Alpha Kaiju would have been Rodan. The Rodan in this is a starbuster, as he is supposed to be comparable to the Showa King Ghidorah. So, as Manda is able to actually fight semi on par with him for very, very brief moments and can survive attacks from Rodan, that means Manda has to at least be Moonbuster. I don't want to put him any higher yet, as he's yet to really do anything in the series or in the lore I already have written for it. So as of right now, Manda is around Moonbuster. Also, the version of Manda in this has a couple abilities normal Manda doesn't. This includes freezing his opponents with an icy aura and firing a beam of pure light. That is roughly comparable to Varen's pure radiation breath. Next, we have another weird one. We have Kong. Kong is kind of like the mass-produced Mecha Godzillas, with his strength being a lot higher than his durability. Although the Kong in this is a lot more durable than any version we've seen in any series so far, that includes Monsterverse Kong. The main reason for this is he's able to take attacks from Destroya, and once you hear Destroya scaling, you'll realize how absurdly impressive a monkey taking that much damage is. But essentially, Kong in this has physical strength that can surpass Godzilla's physical strength before Godzilla gets super or burning, as Godzilla's physical strength does get amped in this. Even when he's using just like a red spiral ray, it gives him an amp. Essentially, base Kong is stronger than base Godzilla physically. On top of this, he also has an amped form called Lightning King Kong, which is essentially just him going full Thor mode on people. His combat gauntlet, which has a blade on it, I'm sure a lot of people have noticed that. It is not the Beast Glove from the new movie, although it is inspired by it. It essentially gives him access to some of his lightning abilities from the Showa era, and he already has these by default in this series, so he essentially has two versions of lightning. He also does have the axe in Monsterverse. It's just one that uses Vengeanceverse Godzilla's parts instead of one of Godzilla's species, so he will get that eventually. He does have it currently in the series. He just, I guess, forgot to bring it with him, or I just forgot to add it. Anyway, Kong in this is physically strong enough to match Destroya briefly. Destroya is a creature that is so powerful in this that he would dwarf pretty much all the Earth Kaiju. This includes Godzilla, and once you hear Godzilla scaling, you'll realize that that's pretty insanely impressive. So essentially, Kong, his physical strength level will be seen when I scale Godzilla. As for durability, he is at least solar system level durability. However, he can only really take one hit on that level, and then he's basically lowered to only around country level. Kong in this can survive massive hits, but since he doesn't have scales or armor like the other Kaiju, you can't really just have a guy whose only defense is fur getting hit with literal lasers repeatedly and claim that it makes sense. Even though nothing really makes sense in Godzilla series anymore. In fact, it never really has. The series about a giant radioactive dinosaur. But still, I want it to be at least vaguely realistic to a small level. Next, I have a couple Kaiju that I'm just going to name off real quick because they all cap out at around the same level as the original Gojira in this. Kumonga, Zilla, Gorosaurus, Skullcrawlers, Warbats, and the Giant Condor. They all cap out at around city, mountain, or island level each, depending on how you want to look at their abilities and how they work. But they're really just not that impressive currently. However, they may get stronger later. Now, a much stronger Kaiju is Baragon, as he would straight up upscale Manda, meaning he would be already above moon level, and he would be the closest thing to a rival Rodan had. Before Godzilla woke up, or at the very least the only Earth Titan that Rodan really worried about, because there are Earth Titans that are a lot stronger than Rodan that just didn't care to try to take the alpha spot, Titanosaurus being the main one. Titanosaurus is a lot stronger than Baragon. Titanosaurus is actually a lot stronger than False Godzilla, who was straight up a galaxy level threat. False Godzilla is a kind of a weird one because his durability does not match his power at all. The reason his durability is really bad is because he's a failed version of Space Godzilla. Essentially, he's a Godzilla clone made by the Exilians using a little bit of Ghidorah's DNA. However, due to a major design flaw, his whole power system gets screwed the second he enters the alien atmosphere, one that he's not used to. Essentially, the only reason he was defeated so easily in the mini-battle video where he's in is because his durability was screwed and lowered to only maybe city level. If he had been perfected, Titanosaurus would have been the only Kaiju out of the three that fought him that would have been able to actually best him. That said, it wouldn't have been besting through pure power, more so besting through raw skill. As False Godzilla was essentially still a child, or a baby actually, but he was just designed to kill. He had no real skill or experience in combat. In fact, he'd never really even experienced pain before he fought. Whereas Titanosaurus is not only much older than the original Gojira would be in this, but he's actually one of the kaiju that Godzilla would have spent a lot of his time fighting and training with growing up. So he's a lot of experienced fighting beings that are even stronger than false Godzilla. And at his absolute best, you could honestly put him in the same Galaxy Buster level, just on a lower end. Low Galaxy. Maybe if you want to make his power more fair, you could say he's just high multisolar, but I'd personally put him in low Galaxy. Above Titanosaurus, we have Mecha Kong. The Mecha Kong in this was designed to have the same physical strength as Kong, which he does have, and to have much better durability. That said, his durability did fail him against Godzilla because, well, he's fighting Godzilla. Godzilla isn't like Destroya. He doesn't hold back most of the time. The only reason Kong really survived an attack from Destroya is because Destroya was heavily suppressed. In fact, he usually is heavily suppressed. Destroya wasn't being heavily suppressed most of his fights. He would have likely killed 90% of all the kaiju in the Vengeanceverse series, including Godzilla himself, very quickly. The reason he is usually suppressed is because his power is linked to his rage. I mean, he can't use his full power until he is really, really pissed off. However, since he has some stuff going on in his lore that makes him believe that Godzilla is somehow connected to the death of his entire species, it's safe to say his rage is definitely coming out now. But back to Mecha Kong. Mecha Kong has the same physical strength as Kong, which I'll get into. The Kong's slightly above where Godzilla's is. But his actual raw power, not counting physical power, like power with his beams, would come out to just under Galaxy level. The Molten Mecha Godzilla we see in the earlier Godzilla Vengeanceverse, back when Godzilla from the Godzilla Vengeanceverse had his old design, which is not a stick figure I made. In fact, for anybody wondering how the stick figures were made, I did not make them entirely. They are edited. The original stick figures are not my own. I simply edited them. That said, I do think they're edited to the point where you would never really confuse them for the older stick figures. And I will redesign pretty much every kaiju by the time Season 2 comes out anyway. So, in case anyone was wondering if I made them, no. I just edited already pre-existing stick figures. But back to the point. Molten Mecha Godzilla is essentially, like many of the others, a imperfect clone with bad durability. The reason his durability is bad is because they messed up with his core and it was melting him. That's why he's molten. It was melting him from the inside, making him incredibly weak to attacks that would heat him up even more, which is why Godzilla's Red Spiral Ray basically one-shots him. In that fight, his breath attack that you see is actually an imperfect version of a mechanical copy of the Red Spiral Ray, which, if it would have been perfected, would have been equal, if not even slightly superior in power to the Red Spiral Ray that Godzilla could fire, a beam powerful enough that it can actually physically harm Destroya. Suppress Destroya, but that's still pretty impressive. You're harming the current top of the verse, a guy who's already massively upscaling people that are already pretty casually Galaxy level. That said, his scale will be equal to Godzilla's Red Spiral. However, his durability is barely planet level. Now to two kaiju that were sort of rivals to Godzilla when he was younger. Dagon, Godzilla's younger brother, and Mothra, who is kinda Godzilla's mate, sorta. I'll explain what I mean by that in a second, but essentially, Dagon, Godzilla's younger brother, originally was only 1/10 of his power. That was back when he had blue abilities, which we haven't seen yet. You'll see in flashbacks. However, when they noticed Destroya's power is growing, before they knew that Destroya was coming back, there's a whole lot of lore. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll explain it in a lore video soon. If you haven't pieced it together from the videos, which could probably be a little hard to do if you don't know what I'm trying to do with it. But anyways, Dagon was originally 1/10 of Godzilla's power. However, after Destroya, they could sense him slowly getting stronger. He essentially went to where Space Godzilla was. Space Godzilla had been defeated in a past battle and sealed within the Hollow Earth. He then used crystals that Space Godzilla was generating subconsciously in order to energize himself and grow more powerful. This essentially caused him to evolve, pretty much in the same way Godzilla's evolving in the new movie, giving him a new pink makeover and enhancing his power. A permanent 5 times boost, making him around half as powerful as Godzilla. Base Godzilla. That said, that's still quite a lot of power and easily puts him above pretty much every Earth kaiju, besides one more, Mothra. Mothra is stronger than base Godzilla in power, and once you see Godzilla's scale, you'll understand why her scale is so absurdly high. But I'm going to come right out and say it, she is multiversal. And when I say multiversal, I mean multiversal as in Godzilla Vengeanceverse multiversal. The Godzilla Vengeanceverse, each verse, just one universe, contains the infinite 4D universe, an infinite 5D hell, a 12D infinite heaven, as well as thousands of pocket dimensions that are all either infinite or very, very, very large in size. I'm talking septillions of light years. That's quite a lot of power, and Mothra can destroy an infinite amount of those. That said, that would be her maximum power as in a self-destruct, not her just every single attack. That's still incredibly impressive. She is a little bit stronger than base Godzilla. So Kong's physical strength, Mecha Kong's physical strength would actually surpass that in physical power. Now, I'm not saying Kong could just punch the universe out of existence, which he could technically, but it would kill him. Because he doesn't have durability to survive that attack. That said, he could punch a being that could withstand a blast like that and damage them tremendously. Now to the real powerhouses of the verse, starting off with the weakest of them, King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah has not really been shown up yet, but he will be stronger than Mothra. Not by a substantial amount, but he is stronger than Mothra. So you could put him in the same scale as her, just on a slightly higher level. And then we get to who would be just above him, Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla was pretty much, in his appearance, that hasn't shown up yet in video form, but I have written the whole lore out for it. Essentially, he is not just multiversal, but given enough time, he would be omniversal. The Omniverse contains a lot more than just an Omniverse, but I'll save that for the lore video when I talk about the actual deities and stuff within this insane verse that I've decided to create. But Space Godzilla in this is at least 100 times stronger than Ghidorah, and Godzilla was barely able to survive a fight with him. And they had to seal him in the Hollow Earth. By the way, the Hollow Earth, once they sealed him in there, he started producing power from it, which Godzilla's been absorbing. That's why Godzilla seems so much stronger when he fights Destroya than he realistically should be, and why he's so agile. It's because he's been getting hyped up on Space Godzilla steroids, essentially. Much like how his brother literally evolved from it. Now we get to Nucleonics. He's an OC Kaiju that has also not appeared yet. Nucleonics is roughly equal to base Godzilla, even after Space Godzilla got the super space steroids. He hasn't really done anything yet, but he will soon. I also forgot to mention Gamera. Gamera is equal to Dagon, and I mean evolved Dagon. Also, Gamera in this has a lot of crazy-ass abilities, and he will be pretty cool to actually have in the series. I also somehow forgot to mention the EVA units and the Jaegers. The Jaegers are pretty much fodderized in this. They're not that good, but they do exist in this verse. They're mainly just out to kill weaker Kaiju. And the EVA units are equal to their counterparts in the actual Evagavian universe. Evagavian, I can't pronounce that word at all. Sorry for any fans of that I might have pissed off my pronunciation. Anyways, they're equal to how they are in their own series. Now to the currently top 3 powerhouses. 3, Godzilla himself. Godzilla in base is a little bit weaker than Mothra. When he's amped up by Space Godzilla's energy, he's slightly stronger than Mothra. Either way, he's high multiversal. And by high, I mean high infinite multiversal, blah, 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 all that. Super is a 200 times boost, so just take that, times it by 200. And burning before he uses an infinite heat ray is a 500 times boost. Once he uses infinite heat rays, that's an infinite multiplier. However, unlike Heisei, first of all, burning form does not mean he's going to die. Also, he does not have a meltdown ability. And he also does not permanently keep the infinite boost from the infinite heat ray. Not to say he doesn't get any amps from it. He does get stronger after we fight. But he's not going to keep a permanent infinite multiplier to his already insane power. Probably, I mean, Heisei Godzilla's allowed to do that because he's going to die anyway. This Godzilla still has much life to live. So, yeah, he's not going to get a permanent, I'm the strongest in the verse now amp. Destroya, the current second strongest character in this, well, from what we've seen, he's second strongest. For all we know, he could, well, for all you guys know, he could be stronger than the actual current, who I'm going to say is the number 1. Destroya pretty blatantly upscales Godzilla in base. I mean, he's whooping pretty much all the Earth Kaiju by himself. Super Godzilla is able to do damage to him. However, once Destroya gets more angry, it's pretty much Super Godzilla would have lost if it wasn't for him amping all the other Kaiju with a ×50 boost. That was Kong, Rodan, Dagon, and a few other Kaiju that he amped with a basically steroid boost that gave him a 50 times multiplier by enhancing them with his own super energy, which was enough to actually briefly overpower Destroya. Once Destroya is in space, he gets even stronger through his maximum rage form, which will pop up in the next episode, versus Burning Godzilla. In this, he can match Burning Godzilla. In fact, he will even surpass Burning Godzilla, not counting the Infinite Heat Ray. But Destroya also has a trump card in this, that being his version of the chest beam. His chest beam is not like the original, as he only unlocks it after witnessing Godzilla's own Infinite Heat Ray. He then mimics it with his chest beam, essentially adding an infinite multiplier every time he uses the chest beam, giving himself his own version of the Infinite Heat Ray. That said, pre-infinite boost attacks, Godzilla and Destroya are both very comfortably in the high infinite multiversal scale, essentially a very low omniversal, and with the infinite boost are pretty casually in pretty much the highest tier omniversal you can be in. You add in the fact they spam this repeatedly and there really is no limit to how powerful they can get during a single fight, but neither of them really wants to destroy their entire verse. And yeah, I know it might be a little weird for someone to say Destroya doesn't want to destroy everything, but Destroya actually has reasons for why he's evil in this, and there are actually beings that he kind of cares about in this universe. So no, he's not going to try to blow up everything just to kill Godzilla, even if it might be a little tempting to him. And obviously Godzilla doesn't want to blow up everything like his brother, his friends, and his planet. He's not going to go crazy and try to destroy everything just to beat Destroya. Even though he would sacrifice himself to kill Destroya if he had to. Now for the current top of the verse, we have Void Ghidorah. Well, there is a being stronger than him. I will mention him in the lore video. Currently, Void Ghidorah is a primordial god. The lore for them is a little crazy. You see, primordial gods in this are the oldest version of gods. The Omniverse, which is essentially made up of infinite multiverses, which are themselves made up of infinite universes, is essentially one part of two entities. There's the Omniverse and there's the Void. The Void is bigger than the Omniverse, but not by an insane amount. They're both colossal, obviously, and would be beyond infinite size. The Void is where the primordial gods reside. They are the first entities that existed in this version of reality. And Void Ghidorah is among the oldest. He's actually the second oldest of the primordial gods. Well, technically, he's one of the two second oldest, as he has a twin brother named Ultima, who is, you might have been able to guess from the name, he's essentially Singular Point Godzilla's true form on steroids. But Void Ghidorah is not only the biological father of Monster X in this, and the grandfather of King Ghidorah, and the creator of King Ghidorah's whole species, as well as all dragons and dragon gods. But he is also just insanely powerful. As a primordial god, he exists beyond the concept of dimensions, meaning he's a beyond-dimensional being, kind of like some of Lovecraft's beings. On top of this, since he lives in the void, you can't really mess with him unless you want to blast your way into it. Kind of like how I said Burning Godzilla would have to get to Cthulhu. And since he is powerful enough to affect the void, that means he's powerful enough to essentially blow up the Omniverse if he really wanted to. But he's more into trying to eat it, which he could do if it wasn't for one major issue, and that's Ultima telling him to piss off, because Ultima wants to conquer it. There's also a third being in this little party of we want to cause chaos named the Destroyer. The Destroyer will be the true top of the verse, but he's yet to really do anything in the lore besides one thing that involves Destroya, but I'll get to that in the lore video. Essentially, the Destroyer is like to Void Ghidorah what Void Ghidorah is to Ghidorah, in a way. But all three of these primordial gods are connected to three of the big major players in the series. I'm sure you can tell what I'm getting by with this. Void Ghidorah is a god that already has a blood connection with Ghidorah. Ultima is the god that created Godzilla's species. Well, he's not related to Godzilla. Godzilla is the strongest of his kind. They do have a connection. And the Destroyer is a being that wants to, well, destroy everything. And it's picked one being in particular to pull the strings from behind the scenes in order to make that the avatar of their destruction. I think you can guess who I'm talking about. Destroya. These three gods will all be antagonists eventually, and they will all be major issues for the heroes in the series. Well, I say heroes lightly. Godzilla did kind of canonically wipe out 4 billion people, but, you know, yeah, anyways, that is some power scaling for the Vengeanceverse series. I'll make more of this later because it gets a little insane, and I feel like there's still some stuff I need to clarify. But yeah, characters in this go from mountain level to omniversal over one generation. It's a little insane. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.